it just really kind of takes over your whole being, really.
Right.
And you're like a little, not even a little bit, you're terrorized. I have OCD and I didn't know that that's what it was. It blew my mind because I thought it was just me and I'm just losing my mind here. I'm going crazy. A person with OCD, it gets sticky. Your kind of fight or flight response is on, everything's firing on all cylinders. Real, actual OCD is not something you prefer. Like, it's not cute at all. Exposure response prevention is absolutely up there as kind of first tier. You have somebody who actually understands what's happening, can help guide you right through that. I've seen people do incredible things and take their life back.
Welcome to Cake for Dinner. This is not your everyday mom podcast. We laugh, we curse, we tell the truth, and we're here to ditch the perfection culture. Hi, friends. Before we jump into today's episode, I have something really special to share. If this podcast has ever made you laugh, made you feel seen, or reminded you that you're not alone in motherhood, I think you're going to love my new book, Cake for Dinner. This isn't a parenting manual. It's the stories I never thought I'd tell, the lessons I learned the hard way, and a reminder that none of us have to be perfect to be really good moms. If you've ever wondered if you're doing enough, this book is for you. Cake for Dinner is available for pre-order now on Amazon, and every pre-order makes a huge difference for a first-time author. If you'd like to support me and help get this message into the hands of more moms, I'd be incredibly grateful. Just search Cake for Dinner on Amazon or click the link in the show notes. Thank you for being here. Now, let's get to today's episode. Today, I'm sitting down with Kristina Orlova, OCD specialist and host of the OCD Whisper podcast, because OCD is one of the most misunderstood diagnoses out there. It's not about being neat or organized. It's intrusive, it's distressing, and a lot of people, especially kids, are struggling with it without even knowing it. So we're getting into what OCD actually looks like and what we're getting wrong. Kristina Orlova, welcome to Cake for Dinner.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I'm, first, you're 7 months pregnant. Congratulations.
Thank you, yes.
I just really feel like this is such an important conversation and topic. I've shared with you that my 19-year-old has pretty severe OCD, and we've had a real journey ourselves. So I'm just excited to educate people. Hopefully, if there's any moms listening who have kids with OCD or have OCD themselves, hopefully this will be educational. So if you're okay, let's just get right into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
So before we get into totally OCD and all that it is, what is your story? Why OCD? What pulled you specifically into this work?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things is that, so I have OCD and I didn't know that that's what it was. I felt like for eons. I really didn't get that clarity until mid-30s.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's a long time to go without knowing. And, it really kind of struck me that, and I mean, what's getting a little bit better now, but there's a lot of ways that it can show up that is just not commonly known. So it gets missed all the time. And, I think for any person, when you're looking at what you think out in the media or in the world, you see things like, usually what's portrayed is some cleaning stuff, some lining things up, maybe a little bit of flickering, switching lights off and on, something like that generally tends to be kind of the vibe, the feel. So you see that and you think, well, I don't have that, so I don't have it. And so when I got confirmation that it was that, and then learned about the different kind of, it's called subtypes or different themes, different ways that OCD can manifest, it blew my mind because I thought it was just me and I'm just losing my mind here. I'm going crazy. And then turns out now you have this thing called relationship OCD. You have this thing called just right OCD, which is more of a feeling based. I didn't know that. Or like morality based. I'm like, what the heck are all these things?
Right. What specifically, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
do you struggle with, and what were the things that sort of hid, that weren't picked up?
Yeah. So if you would look at me on the outside, you'd see somebody who would sit like this. And then you might see me get a little kind of antsy. And then you'd see me back then, I would immediately turn to substances. And I would go overboard a lot of times because I just needed to somehow quiet the mind a little bit or just get away. So really what was going on, though, now that I know, is I was having a lot of mental rituals. So a lot of mental compulsions, and had no clue because I thought,
give us an example. So,
yeah,
because one of the things I feel like with OCD is people don't understand it.
No.
And when you listen to it, you still don't understand it.
Yep.
So if possible, I'd love to really break down today's episode. Mostly because I had no idea what it was, and it's so hard to really grasp. So when you
Yeah.
say mental rituals, kind of either give an example or like break that down
Yeah.
for us.
Totally. And I actually thought a lot about this because in specializing in this for about 10 years, this is the most common thing I keep coming up against, which is how do we explain this in the
Yes.
simplest way, right? So best I can come up with is, so every human has intrusive random thoughts, stuff that just pops in. Suddenly you're like, okay, what is that? Usually folks are able to recognize it fairly quickly that was garbage. That's not necessary. They're able to see it's not part of who I am at all, dismiss it, move on. And that's it. Don't think twice about it. A person with OCD, the parts of the brain that are kind of impacted, think of it this way. It's like that comes up and suddenly it's like it gets sticky.
Yeah.
And so you can't just dismiss it because suddenly your kind of fight or flight response is on, everything's firing on all cylinders. And so you're sitting there temporarily kind of frozen, like, oh my gosh, something's happening. This must mean something. This must mean something big and important. So I have to halt everything and try to solve this. Because typically, if something like that happens for any of us as humans, we do something to try to resolve it and feel better and move on. So that's what we naturally do. It's a natural human response. But with the OCD brain, what's really interesting is that same response actually doesn't work. And so you're doing what you think is helpful, but actually it's kind of linking these things together and creating this association in the mind that, oh, that is a threat.
Right.
So that fact that thought kind of jumped in there, or that image or a feeling, oh, that's the same as, let's say, somebody actually standing here with a knife ready to attack you. So the brain is suddenly not differentiating. And so internally, when that happens, like any person, you would freak out. Like, what the heck is this? So you do everything in your power to get rid of it. But the thing you do maybe works a little bit, and then it comes back again. You go, what? Why? Okay, let me go do that same thing I did
And they
before.
can just be totally random.
They can be different random
concepts.
things, but the thing that we've seen time and time again, it tends to be things people care about. So it's actually the things you really value. It's your vulnerabilities, your insecurities. That's really where the OCD mind tends to focus and attack, I would say. It's kind of this feeling like you're literally losing a grip of your mind for a moment. And the intense doubt process that starts, where you start to question, why am I having this? What does this mean about me? But I don't want to, but do I secretly want to? Oh my gosh. And so you start to go deeper and deeper into this rabbit hole of trying to figure this out.
And that's really where it's different, because somebody with just thoughts that are coming and going, as you mentioned, we all have, they come and then they do exactly that. They go. And for somebody with OCD, they dance with those thoughts.
Yes. Because it gets
very
sticky.
intensely.
Exactly.
A psychiatrist actually gave me this analogy, which made me feel horrible, but I just couldn't understand my daughter's dance really with these like things that just didn't make sense, and they were so irrational. And he said, you know what it's like? Imagine that you flew to a foreign country with your family as a kid, and when you got off the plane, you looked around and you couldn't find them. He said that's the level of terror she feels with these thoughts. Hers specifically was emetophobia, which is the fear of vomit, which really deeply was a fear of being sick. But gosh, when he told me that, I was just like, wow, like as a mom, that impacted me greatly, but also helped me really understand the level of intensity around this thing. So,
well, that's the thing when it's happening internally, that I mean, I hear this all the time from clients, and I experience this myself, as you really feel like you're losing your mind. Because it's just this internal thing that's happening, and it's nothing external that you can physically grab or hold or point to. And so if you don't have the words for it and you don't understand what's happening, you really feel like, oh my gosh, is this what a psychotic break is? Is that what's going on?
And then the irrationality around it, I think, makes people feel stupid or crazy, which leads to some secrecy. People often don't feel comfortable being like, hey, this is the thing I'm worried about.
Of course not. I mean, if you think of, okay, forget OCD for a minute, right? Generally humans, we don't walk around sharing our weird, funky thoughts. We usually keep that to ourselves when something comes up. And generally we kind of act like everything's good. And hi, how are you? And life is just life. We're lifing.
Right.
Right? And so now here you're having these intrusive thoughts or feelings or images that just are bombarding you. You're trying to get rid of it, but the act of trying to get rid of it is the thing that's keeping it stuck, which is so wild, right? And you don't know that. So you're going deeper into it. It's getting more entrenched and it happens so lightning fast. Next thing you know, I mean, you're having intense feelings of shame, guilt, anxiety, all sorts of distress from 0 to 100 at rapid fire, right? So what do you do then, right? How are you going to share this with somebody when it's something that feels so taboo or inappropriate or strange, or you start to get repetitive about it because you can't seem to shake it? It just really kind of takes over, I'd say, your whole being, really.
Right.
And you're like not even a little bit, you're terrorized.
Yeah, that's why I'm going to go a bit off script here, but that's why when when you really had an experience with OCD, I've watched it through my daughter. But once you've had that experience, when someone says flippantly, "Oh, I'm so OCD," it's tough, it's
Yes.
tough, and and that's really why I wanted to do this podcast. I would love to contribute to information,
Yeah.
around OCD awareness. So let's start simple. What does OCD actually look like in real life versus what people think it looks like? Like, let's dig a little more into that because I do think so many people have an idea about it. So you kind of explained the intrusive thoughts. How does that go into compulsivity?
Well, so you may or may not see something inwardly or outwardly.
Okay.
But the main thing is that a person essentially, when you're having that internal or external kind of trigger or something that's activating everything, and again, everything's firing on all cylinders, it's like your system is temporarily hijacked. You're trying to get out of that.
Yeah.
So compulsion is basically any behavior, literally any. It could be physical, it could be mental, anything that you're doing because you're trying to get rid of that. You're trying to neutralize it. You're trying to make sure that, you don't become this bad person you think you might be. So you start to lose your sense of self or self-confidence or self-knowing in the process. And you start to do more and more of those behaviors because when you start doing them, they initially work a little bit. So naturally, as any human, you're going to repeat and do the thing that you think works because it worked a little bit
And
initially,
it
so
could
let's
be
do more.
literally anything.
Anything. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, like, I used to do tapping like this. And I'm like, what the heck was that? I didn't know, but that was something I used to do, is a tap in a little pool because it just felt right.
Yeah.
Right? Some people.
And then it's almost akin to superstition in the way that you think that that's working. So then you need to do it in order to reduce.
Well, it's a little different because superstition you might do because you think kind of, but different because you could theoretically, if you wanted to or needed to, you could pause. But here you feel this intense urgency,
Got it.
like you have to do this.
Right.
Because if you do not, something bad will happen.
Got it.
Whatever that is. And so I've seen people do mentally math. I've seen people recite prayers or certain words or forwards or backwards. I've seen people walk a certain pattern. I've seen people, the common things, of course, is checking. There's a lot of things like compulsive avoidance. So you're avoiding things you really don't need to be avoiding, but you're now in such a state of terror and fright that you completely start to back away and isolate. I've seen people stuck in showers for up to 8 hours a day. Where your skin is literally raw and red and your hands are broken. So, the degree of that repetitive behavior that you're doing, again, whether it's mentally, you're going in a loop because you keep trying to figure this out and get to the bottom of this thing. And you really think you're solving something and not recognizing that you're looping. And all you're getting out of that is more anxiety and more terror and probably a lot of the time sleepless nights, horrible dreams, or OCD shows up in dreams, and now you're like, oh my gosh, what does that mean? It's like this waterfall effect that just keeps going and going and going.
And if you are the partner of someone with OCD, or in my case, the parent of somebody with OCD, you can contribute negatively in the way that you respond, which I had to learn because my daughter, for example, would wake up and be like, do you think I'm going to get sick? Do you think? And I would answer rationally, no, you're not going to get sick. Or I would answer what I thought she needed so we could just get to school. But what I didn't understand was that I was literally pouring fuel on the fire because I was putting it out temporarily, only for it to grow bigger.
Well, that's the doubt process, right? And that's what I'm saying. When you don't know, it's such a counterintuitive experience because you're doing all the things any parent would do for their child. It makes sense, right?
Right.
Just like the person experiencing it is doing everything in their power that any person would do to try to feel better.
Yeah.
But you're just not recognizing that those same things don't work here. And
Right.
so, when you're giving that reassurance and answering the question, it's not like it's inherently bad, but it is bad when you have OCD because then the person, like in your case, your kiddo is essentially saying, okay, yeah, but, right? There's always going to be that yeah, but, because it's a doubting disease. So the mind is always going to look for loopholes. It's going to look for, oh, but what about this? But what about that? Oh, you didn't think about this. But did you remember that? But what about this one time? And so there's no end to that process. And again, we're not even realizing that we are now engaging it in that way.
So what is the proper reaction or response when someone is in an OCD loop?
Yeah, so it's a tough one. I'll be honest. It feels a little tough initially, which is why it's important to have education first.
Yes.
And kind of lay the groundwork, which is essentially like, let's recognize that when you start to incessantly look for those answers and you're asking those questions, that's actually rumination, and that's a compulsive way that you're now looking for a response. And let's recognize you're not satisfied when you actually get a real reply. You're not able to really take it and digest it, right? Because you're looking for a specific kind of a reply or a specific answer that you want. Your OCD wants, really, not even you. So if we understand that, then we say, okay, let's not feed that. Let's help you. And the way to help you is to say, hey, let's allow some of these to just kind of linger there. Let's see what it's like if we don't answer it. We just kind of leave it unread.
Right.
And
which is torture for somebody
it
with
feels
OCD.
so funky. It does for parents and kids initially, and especially parents. When I would do family sessions, I would always tell parents, you are going to feel off because we're also asking you to go against the grain, against what you naturally, intuitively feel you should do as a parent. And now you have to kind of hold the line and say, I love you. I know this is tough.
Yeah.
And we don't have to answer that anymore. Or you've asked me, several times. Sounds like we're entering the loop cycle. We agreed. I'm probably not going to answer that anymore.
Right.
So let's see what it's like to
Or
be with that.
What I used to do is just say, she would say, do you think I'm going to get sick? And I would say, I have no idea what's going to happen today, which was torture for both.
Yeah,
because
that's
she probably wasn't going to get
actually
sick.
doing exposure response prevention, because that's the strategy from there, is that we just say, let's entertain not having that answer right now. That's basically what we're saying. We don't know right now. Let's just live with that.
She would be like, Mom, no, don't do that.
Of
Just
course.
tell me. Just tell me.
Of course. Of course.
That was so difficult.
It's tough. It
and
is.
it's also, for parents out there, it's also difficult because then somehow I would manage that. And then she's in the school system where hardly anybody understands OCD.
100%.
So she would get reassurance all day long because also those teachers had 20 other kids. They needed to just feed her what they needed to feed her, which I understood, but also it made it worse, right?
Exactly.
So it's like you're having to coach everybody on how to handle OCD, which is
100%.
Really wild.
Well, and it's tough, right? Because not everybody has time, right? Everybody's got different priorities, different needs. So now you're kind of up against a whole bigger
Or
issue.
compassion, because OCD can seem so irrational that I felt often like teachers thought I was like just super codependent and hand holding her too much, coddling her too much. And you're like, no, this is a real thing,
Yes,
it's
it
tough.
is. Exactly. It is a real thing. And I think that's what's amazing. I mean, now there's even more conversation than there has been before. There's more celebrities and folks who have big platforms that are speaking out, which I think is great.
Yeah.
Because there's still so much that is misunderstood. It's incredible. And, at the age and where we're at, that, people will still, make really off the cuff comments or jokes or like, oh, it's like a little quirk. And like, no, that's actually not what it is. It's kind of like if you've ever gone through a real difficult experience like that, like, what it is, right? You're not going to just flippantly throw those kind of words around.
Right.
Yeah, so I think we definitely need to keep talking about, like real actual OCD
Yeah.
is not something you prefer. It's not something you like. Oh yeah, like, oh, I like to line my stuff up. I have OCD. I'm
Yeah,
like,
people
honey,
say
no,
it in
no.
in almost a way that it in some way is like you'd be lucky to have it because 'cause you're
Yeah, like it's a
organized
cute
and
thing.
clean.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly. And I'm like, it's not cute at all.
yeah.
And
Oh,
if
it's
you like
so not
it,
cute.
it's not OCD, I'm telling you, because
Right.
not one person that you will ever speak to that actually has OCD and has gone through it will
Mhm.
ever say, oh, yeah, I like that.
Right.
Totally loved feeling guilty. Amazing. Best feeling
Yeah.
of my life.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
people aren't going to say that.
definitely not. Um, why do you think it's so misunderstood even now? I feel like most people still get it wrong. Like, why do you think that is?
I mean, partially, I think that there's not enough, I think, fuller representation of OCD.
Mhm.
If you think about it, how do most of us learn or see things? It is through movies, it is through media, right?
Sure.
People read, I'm gonna hope. But that's kind of what you see generally. And so if you don't see a more diverse representation,
Mm.
you really think, well, it's just this narrow slice that I know. And that's it. Even if we take contamination, for example, people will know that word and say, okay, oh yeah, germs, contamination. But there's so many ways contamination can show up for every
Sure.
individual. And that's what people don't know. All these subtleties and all these variations of how contamination actually looks. It's not just the straightforward that you see people washing their hands a lot of times
Mhm.
and that's it. That's
Mhm.
just one tiny way. So I think that's one of the things that why it gets misunderstood. And I think also it gets conflated and confused with there's something called OCPD, like obsessive compulsive personality disorder,
Mhm.
or it gets confused and conflated with like a more type A folks.
Yeah.
And so because we do see sometimes repetitive behaviors, it's not like it's only to, for folks with OCD, but if we don't understand the difference when
Yeah.
somebody's doing something more because they want it, they like it, or they think this is the right way, that's a whole different process
Right.
than when somebody's doing it because they feel like I have to, otherwise something horrible is going to happen, or I'm going to feel this off feeling or this thing and I can't get rid of it, or I'm going to be stuck in something and I need this to go away because it's not leaving me alone.
I think that's interesting because sometimes I'll relate it to my experience with addiction.
Mm.
I'm sober. But even sobriety and addiction, you see all over, the news and in movies, right? So
Yeah.
it does have a bit of shame attached to it, but you do see it in the
Mhm.
world. And OCD, you do not. So I think you're right on that. That makes so much sense. Um, What are some of the lesser known types of OCD that would surprise people listening? Because I do want to educate on it isn't
Mhm.
just germs, but
Yes.
what are some of the lesser known types?
Well, look, for example, I had really, I mean, I have, it's just I'm in recovery, but relationship OCD. Like when you hear that, people are like, what the heck's that?
Mhm.
So it's something where, a relationship can be totally fine. You're going along, you're connecting, but then you start to really question, oh my God, but is it the right person? But is it the right feeling? So you're constantly looking and checking for things, and
Mhm.
suddenly the relationship becomes the focal point
Right.
where you're questioning everything about it, you're doubting it. Um, I and if God forbid you have a relationship that isn't healthy or good, now you have this compounding effect where it gets really hard to sort because maybe something isn't going well or isn't you're not connecting as well as you should, and you have your relationship OCD on top of
Right.
it. So that's just one small example
Mhm.
of something that not everybody knows.
Right.
It could be like the just right OCD, which is a feeling driven experience, which that's something that not everybody knows. It's not always an intrusive thought or image. It can be like we're sitting here and for no reason at all, really suddenly I just feel like I'm off and I need to do something to kind of fix that. Whether that might be I need to tap or I need to adjust or sit a certain way or do something, or
Mhm.
you might see people kind of moving something and they only do it not for any number, not for a number, but they're doing it until it feels like, okay, right there. And it
Right.
could be different every time because it's more, I'm looking for that feeling of, oh, okay, now it feels complete and I can step
And I
away.
think the just right OCD sometimes shows up academically for young people, right?
It
As like an
can.
initial, um, Like, what are some of the things that alert parents? Because sometimes it can look like other things, right? Like, is this OCD? Is this ADHD? Is this just my kid being hyper focused on getting good grades?
Yeah, well, I think the thing you're looking for, if you're on the outside and you don't know anything about anything, what I would say is look for if you're starting to notice kind of clusters of repetitive behaviors that start to pick up and amp up. And those could be anything from whether they're like some kids you might notice they start to erase and rewrite, erase and rewrite, erase and rewrite before they can finally move on. Or you're noticing maybe studying that on average, any other kid seems maybe they need, let's just say, arbitrary number an hour. But you're noticing your kid is taking a lot longer, and I mean a lot longer, and there isn't really any other explanation. It's not like there's a learning issue or there's a tough topic. It just seems like if you kind of watch or ask them, they might say things like, "Oh, no, I just need to reread it because I wasn't sure I understood." Like, that's one of those kind of sneaky ways that you might, if you don't know, you might not hear that and think that you think, okay, they're trying to understand. But that's one of the ways OCD can show up is this need to understand or understand perfectly.
Right.
And so now you're getting stuck on reading a paragraph and you can't even go with the rest of or finish the rest of the page because you're trying to make sure you're getting that or you're getting it right. So anything like that, avoidance, if they start to avoid things in a way that they weren't before, if they start to come to you and ask you a lot of questions that seem like kind of the same question, maybe it's slightly worded slightly differently as if it's new, but really like, that sounds like more of the same though.
Right.
Those are going to be all clues you're looking for to say, wait a second, this is now becoming a repetitive behavior. It's increasing. It's starting to interfere. with
Or if
some-
they need you to respond a certain way.
Yep.
Right. I feel like that's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
What are some other lesser known examples?
People know about like aggressive themes, but some themes that people get really confused around, like pedophilia OCD, because people might confuse, oh my gosh, like, what do you mean? Or maybe you just want to. But no, people with actual OCD, it goes against who they know they're supposed to be. It goes against their values and morals. This is not something anybody wants at all. But, they suddenly...
So that's them thinking they want to do that.
Well,
or
they
worrying
might see
that
like a little, I don't know, they might think like they're at a playground, or maybe they saw something, or they saw a baby, like, oh, they're a cute little kid. Somebody commonly will think kids are cute. Like, that's not, that's not nothing here nor there. But somebody with OCD might go, oh my gosh, but why did I think that? And if God forbid there was any feeling of anxiety, why did I just have a feeling though? Oh my gosh, what does that mean? And so it's boom, there we go. It starts that process again.
Okay.
So then we have things like sensory motor OCD. We're talking about blinking, breathing, where we're suddenly kind of these natural ways that our body operates. We don't have to think about this stuff.
What's the difference between that and like sensory processing disorder?
Well, I think, and I'm gonna say this as a disclaimer, I'm more well versed in the OCD anxiety realm than some of the other realms, but I believe sensory processing connects more like with spectrum some disorders, and that's a little different than here, because here you're focusing on your natural functions, and now you're...
And what, like hyper focusing on them?
Yeah, like blinking, and you might like start to stretch your eyes, or you might start to blink a lot, or I've had a kiddo who was a lot of focus on swallowing, and like, am I swallowing right? And then like would do these kind of sounds, and then would need to spit into a trash can a lot to get rid of spit. So stuff like that, where again, the body's sending these signals and you don't understand what it is. And suddenly you get all your attention focuses on that, because again, you're trying to get rid of that uncomfortable feeling,
right,
and feel better. So you start to do all these behaviors. There, of course, can be some tics.
Yeah. And are tics associated with OCD, or is that a separate diagnosis?
I'd say from what we know now, it's like in the family, but it has its own separate way that it shows up.
Got it. Yeah, it's so much more complex than people even know.
It is. There's a lot more. But again, if you have somebody who specializes in it, it's pretty easy to assess and diagnose really accurately that, yeah, this is OCD
Let's
we're dealing
actually
with.
talk about that. So originally I took my daughter to, I don't know, maybe 4 different people. There's, there was a lot of talk therapy. I think somebody did EMDR. Now I wasn't familiar with OCD at the
Yeah,
time, so I was just trying to throw anything at
of
the
course.
wall, you know?
Yeah.
The OCD seemed to get worse.
Yes.
So why doesn't that stuff work? And then I want to move into what does.
So talk therapy is a really common one. I myself even went through that and other things like that. And think of it this way. If you're talking, what are you really doing externally out loud? You're essentially co-ruminating together. You're processing, but really you're going over the same territory.
Yeah.
So in the moment in the session, it could feel like, oh, okay, I think I have a little clarity. But the moment you leave, you go right back in your head and you start to doubt and question everything incessantly. So you're back again the next session and now you feel worse because now you've spent, whatever I would say, that week re kind of covering all that territory you covered there and anything extra that you think you didn't cover, didn't think that because you're looking for the solution. You're trying to turn every stone, not realizing that there's no answer. And so you're going to come back and the therapist will say, oh, okay, well, let's get a little bit more underneath this. But the more you do that, you're essentially, without recognizing, co-compulsing out loud now. And so you're making the whole experience progressively worse and really rapidly.
So it's like an hour of paid reassurance almost.
Almost, yeah, exactly. Or going in circles. And that's why even therapists who don't know it's OCD will say, like, gosh, like we covered this. I thought we've made a little traction. Oh no, okay, we're going back again. And then they might confuse that thinking, oh, maybe there's some hidden psychological trauma. Granted, sometimes there can be trauma, but sometimes not. Sometimes all this is a mental compulsion and you're not recognizing what it is. And unfortunately, you're making it worse.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we have to kind of get off that hamster wheel, if you will.
And so exposure therapy is the best way to treat OCD, correct?
Yeah, so International OCD Foundation has done a great job with putting together a list of kind of like first tier, second tier, third tier interventions that we have at this point. Exposure response prevention is absolutely up there as kind of first tier. And, if done well, people really respond to it. It's a great therapy. And I think you do need to make sure you have somebody who is skilled enough and has done this enough that, they'll know how to work with you and when and how to kind of challenge because they see and know OCD so well. So the kid or the person can be throwing whatever they want in the room. And a skilled therapist will just look, okay, sounds good anyway, and just move that along and keep the course, if you will.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it better because you have somebody who actually understands what's happening and can help guide you right through that.
And it's like, what I had to learn was exposure therapy is terrifying for somebody with OCD.
Well, of course, because think of it. We're saying, okay, we're going to be asking you to face the thing you're so scared of. I mean, I think any human's going to go, what? When you hear that, you're like, no. But again, with education and explaining the what and the how, and that we're going to do it together. We're going to like building blocks, one baby step at a time.
Walk us through that. I know what the building blocks are, but for someone listening who wants to learn about exposure therapy, kind of walk us through what that would look like.
Well, let's say for me with relationship OCD, okay, I would want to create what we call a hierarchy. So you want to create kind of a list of, okay, what are the different things that set off the cycle of OCD? Once you make that list, you start to think through, okay, are there things that are more happening in your mind or are there things externally that are going on? Once you have that picture, then you say, okay, let's work on starting with something really small that you feel like you're willing to try. You're willing to kind of be with this discomfort a little bit and kind of play with it. And sometimes it can start with something as small as, let's pick a word. Maybe just one simple word that's uncomfortable. But maybe not too uncomfortable, right? So we don't want to kind of have you be completely flooded. Just something light that you feel like you can do. Or maybe an adjacent, a nearby word. And so we'll start with something like that and say, okay, let's have you now see what it's like if you take that word and start repeating it. So open up by having the word, saying the word on purpose, leaning into it. and just letting your body go through whatever it naturally needs to go through, and keep saying it for a little bit of time. And either we'll time it depending on the person. If they're too nervous, we might say, let's just try for 5 minutes. Or if you're comfortable with that, maybe let's just see how long it'll take you until you start to get bored naturally. That might be one way we start. And so what we're doing is we're already teaching the person that, listen, if you actually lean in this way, look at what starts to happen organically, right? Your body suddenly starts to get a little bored of it because you're not running away, you're not fixing it,
Which is a great sign.
Exactly.
Right.
And so if you see you could do that tiny little piece there, suddenly you're like, oh, what else can I do? We're like, great. Now let's go in a little bit harder one. And so little by little like that, you start to build out those steps, and really your confidence comes back. You start to realize, okay, I can do this. I can feel this. Okay, I'm making it. Okay, now, okay, things are okay. And then, you're off and running. And then we start to get into that's called an imaginal exposure, what I just described. You can go from a word to kind of we would say a hot sentence. You might write a full little script. Then for some people where, let's say, imaginal exposures are not as effective, if for some people it doesn't work, that's fine. We do what's called in vivo live exposures. It's okay, let's look at all the situations, people, places, objects, things that you either are avoiding or doing something around them. And let's start with, again, one item at a time and seeing what it's like to re-engage with it and observe. Start to practice observing that internal experience without fighting or trying to get rid of it or fleeing from it. So we're starting to teach you how to observe a little bit better.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we're creating a little bit of that separation now. And so step by step, suddenly you're able to engage more of that kind of conscious awareness in a different way, where you're just watching and noticing the experience instead of being so in the experience. And then again, step by step, suddenly you're like, oh, I can start to engage with this, or I can pull that, or okay, I start to go towards events. And again, over time, as that muscle builds, I've seen people do incredible things and kids do incredible things where suddenly they're really taking their life back. They're like, oh, now I'm like, okay, I'm going to go after this thing. I'm like, okay, let's go. And then, you really see folks shine and take their life back, really.
Right.
And start to.
Well, the thing they're so scared of all of a sudden.
Exactly.
My daughter's was, as I said, emetophobia. So the fear of vomit was the thing we were sort of working with. And they would, and it's so wild to learn all of this when you have no understanding of it. I think the original thing was maybe looking at pictures. And then we moved to sounds, like listening to people vomit. And our homework assignment was we had to take this little stuffed animal, the whole family, and we would throw it from person to person and make a barf sound. Now, my kids loved it. My daughter was horrified. Naturally, she's the one with the OCD. But it was like all hands on deck. And then we moved into, seeing real vomit, smelling vomit, and then all things that were associated. So being hot and smelling it, being dizzy, so she would have to spin around and smell it. In the end, this is the craziest shit ever. In the end, the last day was the therapist and her in a bathroom alone, and he made himself vomit.
Ooh, okay.
I mean, is that guy a gangster?
But you know what? I have to tell you, ERP therapists, I'm going to just put it out there, a little bit of badasses, because the amount of things I've had to do as an ERP therapist, it got to a point where I'm like, man, you're going to have to really work hard to surprise me, because
I mean, that shit. I remember being in the lobby and on the phone with my husband and saying either this guy is a genius or he's full fucking crazy. Like, do you know what I mean? And at that point, we were so desperate, we were willing to give it a roll. And I will tell you that she's 19 today and she doesn't like vomit, neither does anybody else, but it does not
control her life like that
at all.
Exactly.
Zero.
Exactly. And that, I will say two things. One is, that's what you learn through the process, is you still don't have to like certain things. It doesn't mean like you do this and then suddenly you're completely, free and clear of everything. It's like, no, you're still allowed to not like something, but you can be with it. You don't have to run and do all these, rituals and behaviors. And second, a really well-trained ERP therapist will tell you, this is something I learned very early on. They'd say, know your limits, know what you are not willing to work with. And so, a lot of therapists will, especially if you're doing ERP, like we'll go as far as we need to, because we also want to show the client, like, look, I will do this all the way with you. We'll go through the fire together and let's come out on the other side. But like, personally, I have a thing with insects. So I had one case that folks came to me to work on that. And I had to tell them, honestly, I'm not the right person for you.
Right.
Because that I will not be able to do exposures, because I just like, no, I have a hard
I
no
would
insect
imagine
line.
you'd have to have some boundaries. Another thing that's interesting is, I think I told you this privately, but my daughter was awful to this guy. I think she was so scared every time we got to the
Oh,
office
yeah.
that she was so rude to him and just belligerent. And it was so hard for me because I'm her mother and this is totally
Well, of
unacceptable.
course.
And he said to me one time, listen, she's trying to get me to fire her.
Yep.
So if you can't deal with it, wait in the lobby.
Yep,
And I was
exactly.
like, God, I mean, this guy.
And that's what I'm telling you. ERP therapists have thicker skin because
Oh, he wasn't even phased. He knew
exactly.
the purpose. I didn't really get it at first, I just thought she was being, like, horrible.
He's like, no, this is testing and fighting. That's fine.
Yeah.
And that's your OCD talking. But I see you and I'm here to help you, not your OCD.
Yeah.
So
He also said, listen, Keisha, the thing that is gonna get her out of this is that little thing there that is fighting for her life, like, that's gonna get her out of this. Don't rob her of that now.
I love that. That's actually great.
Yeah, looking back on all of it, what a phenomenal therapist, right? Like, just so educated. I don't want to, cut this off short, but I also want to make sure that parents because a lot of people will ask me, do you think this is OCD? What do you think this is? Like, you mentioned a few things. Are there any telltale signs that you would say that's definitely something that you should see a specialist about? Because I do think people are confused and then they go to talk therapy. Are there any things that are like, yeah, definitely seek an OCD specialist right out of the gate?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I'll be honest, but it's hard, right? Because a lot of people ask that question, and I get it. We as humans, we just give me the cliff notes, give me that quick little, just let me get there. Like we said earlier, right? Anything you start to see where things are taking a lot longer than they should, like double time, more than that, a lot of repetitive behaviors, you start to notice a lot of avoidances, or like you said, asking certain questions over and over, or needing you to do things a certain way. Those are going to be some clues to start to go, what's going on here? Because this is not getting a little rigid, or it's getting repetitive. We're looping in this interesting way. And if you ever suspect that it might be, do everybody a favor, go straight to the OCD therapist.
That's what I wish I would have done.
Because all that time you're spending hopping around, at least this way, if it isn't, you'll know right away.
Yeah.
And you'll have a better direction. But if it is,
then you're in the
you
right.
can get on that right path faster.
Is there anything regarding nighttime? Because a lot of stuff I hear from parents, especially early on with young kids, is like a shit show nighttime is.
Yes.
The rituals around nighttime.
Yes.
Is that just coincidence, or is there any?
Well, I think there's a couple of things going on there. I think one of them is, think about it. If the kiddo is still going to school, right? And like any kid, you're working really hard to just still be in class, be with your friends, gonna get through. So when you get home and then it gets to nighttime, it's like you finally just kind of like everything just collapses. So all the things are gonna come out. 100%. So that's one of them. The other one could be that perhaps the OCD really is just, it seems to be nighttime is more the peak time. For some people, it can be throughout the day. For some, mornings are worse. Some people, night is worse. So it could also be that. That's the thing. There's so many variables, but
it's always hard to talk about OCD because there's so many nuances and so many different things. But I just wanted to take the time today to really sort of point out, identify some of the things people don't know, identify some of the like obvious themes, and then also to just really emphasize the gravity of it emotionally so that people can stop making jokes about it. Because I feel like as someone who supports someone with OCD, it's just, meaningful, I think, for people to really get that part.
Yes.
If someone wanted to find you or to learn more about OCD, or really ask you questions so to know if they do have OCD, how could they find you?
So my private practice is Core Results, .com. That's all focused on OCD and anxiety disorders.
Okay.
And then I have my podcast called OCD Whisperer Podcast. So I
love
literally
that
have been
title.
covering OCD for I don't know how many years now, but
Yeah. And I was recently on your podcast.
yes,
So
yes, our episode's coming out soon.
awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah,
I feel like
thank
this
you.
is such an important conversation. We really appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Of course.